Alice and Elizabeth are sitting in a charming little cafe, surrounded by the soft clinking of cups and the murmur of patrons. The cafe is cozy, with warm lighting and a shelf of books against one wall. They have just ordered their favorite drinks, Alice a cappuccino and Elizabeth a chai latte, and settled into a conversation about their hobbies.
Taking a sip of her cappuccino. I've been thinking a lot about hobbies lately. There are so many things I want to try, but it feels like there's never enough time.
Nodding, I know what you mean. Life can get so busy, and it's hard to find time for the things you love. But hobbies are so important for keeping us sane and happy. What hobbies have you been interested in trying?
Well, I've always loved art, so I've been thinking about getting into painting. I did a little bit in high school, but nothing serious. I thought it might be nice to pick it up again and see where it takes me.
That sounds wonderful. Painting is such a therapeutic and expressive hobby. What kind of painting are you interested in? Watercolors, oils, acrylics?
I'm leaning towards watercolors. I love how they can be so delicate and yet so vibrant. There's something magical about how the colors blend together. I've been watching some tutorials online, and it looks challenging but also really rewarding.
Watercolors are beautiful. I love the unpredictability of them, how they can create these lovely, soft edges. Do you have any particular subjects you want to paint?
I think I'd like to start with landscapes. I'm fascinated by nature and the way light changes everything. I've always admired those dreamy, ethereal watercolor landscapes. And maybe some botanical illustrations too. I find flowers and plants so inspiring.
That's a great choice. Nature has so much beauty to capture, and it's different every time. I can see how painting could help you see the world in a new way, paying attention to details you might otherwise miss.
Exactly. It's also a great excuse to spend more time outside, sketching and observing. What about you? What hobbies have you been into lately?
I've been really into cooking and baking lately. It started as a necessity, but I've grown to love experimenting in the kitchen. There's something so satisfying about creating a delicious meal from scratch.
That's amazing. I've always admired people who can cook well. It's such a useful and creative skill. What kind of dishes do you like to make?
I love experimenting with different cuisines. Lately, I've been into Mediterranean food, lots of fresh veggies, olive oil, and herbs. I've been making things like stuffed grape leaves, hummus, and baklava. And for baking, I've been trying my hand at sourdough bread.
Wow, that sounds delicious. Sourdough is no joke. It's a serious commitment. How's it going?
Laughs, it's definitely been a journey. The first few loaves were a bit dense. But I'm getting the hang of it. There's a lot of science involved, which I find fascinating. It's like a blend of art and chemistry.
That's a great way to put it. Baking is definitely a science, especially with something like sourdough. It must be so rewarding when you get it right.
It is. There's nothing quite like the smell of fresh bread baking, and that moment when you cut into a loaf and see the beautiful crumb structure. It's so satisfying. Plus, it's delicious.
Smiling, I can imagine. I'd love to try baking bread someday, but it seems a bit intimidating. Do you have any tips for a beginner?
Start simple. You don't have to jump straight into sourdough. Even a basic loaf of bread can be really rewarding to make. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every failed loaf is a learning experience. Also, patience is key, especially with sourdough. The fermentation process takes time, but it's worth it.
That's great advice. I think I might start with something simple like a banana bread or a basic white loaf. It's been a while since I baked anything, but I think it would be fun to get back into it.
Definitely. Baking is such a comforting activity. Plus, you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Speaking of hobbies, have you been doing any reading lately? I know you're a big book lover.
Oh yes. I've been reading a lot lately. I just finished The Night Circus, and it was fantastic. Such a beautifully written book. I've also been getting into more nonfiction, especially books about psychology and self-improvement.
The Night Circus is such a magical book. I love the way it creates such a vivid, enchanting world. What kind of nonfiction have you been reading?
I just finished Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's all about how small habits can lead to big changes. It's really practical and full of great advice on how to build good habits and break bad ones. I found it really inspiring.
That's a great book. I read it last year, and it really made me think about my own habits. It's amazing how much of our behavior is influenced by habits we're not even aware of.
Exactly. It's all about making small, manageable changes that add up over time. I've been trying to implement some of the tips like habit stacking and setting up my environment to support good habits. It's been helpful.
That's awesome. It's all about consistency and making those small changes stick. I should revisit that book and refresh my memory. Do you have any other hobbies you've been into?
I've been trying to get back into running. I used to run a lot, but I fell out of the habit. It's been nice to lace up my shoes and hit the trails again. There's something so freeing about running, especially in nature.
That's great. Running is such a good way to clear your mind and get some exercise. Do you run on trails often?
I try to. There's a beautiful trail near my house that winds through a forest and along a river. It's peaceful and not too crowded, which is nice. I love being surrounded by nature while I run. It's so calming.
That sounds lovely. I've always wanted to get into running, but I find it hard to stay motivated. How do you keep yourself going?
It's definitely a challenge sometimes, especially when you're starting out. For me, it's about setting small goals and celebrating progress. I also try to make it enjoyable by listening to music or podcasts. And having a good pair of running shoes makes a big difference.
Those are good tips. I might give it a try, especially with the nicer weather coming up. It would be a good way to get some fresh air and exercise.
Definitely. Start slow and build up gradually. It's all about finding a pace that works for you and enjoying the process. What about you? Any new hobbies or interests?
Well, I've been dabbling in photography. I got a new camera recently, and I've been having fun experimenting with it. I'm no professional, but I love capturing moments and playing around with different settings.
That's awesome. Photography is such a creative outlet. What do you like to photograph?
Mostly nature and landscapes. I love capturing the beauty of the outdoors, sunsets, flowers, trees. I also enjoy taking candid shots of people. There's something special about capturing genuine, unposed moments.
That's wonderful. Photography is such a powerful way to capture memories and tell stories. Do you have any favorite places to shoot?
There's a beautiful botanical garden nearby that I love visiting. It's full of vibrant flowers and interesting plants, and there's always something new in bloom. I also like going to the beach and taking photos of the waves and the sunsets.
That sounds beautiful. There's so much beauty in nature, and photography is a great way to appreciate it. Do you share your photos anywhere?
I've been thinking about starting an Instagram account to share my photos. Right now, I just share them with friends and family. It would be nice to have a platform to showcase my work and connect with other photographers.
You should definitely do it. It's a great way to share your passion and get feedback. Plus, Instagram is full of inspiring photographers and beautiful images. You could learn a lot and get new ideas.
That's true. I think I'll give it a shot. It would be a fun way to document my progress and maybe inspire others.
Absolutely. It's all about sharing your perspective and what you find beautiful. I'd love to see your photos.
Thanks. I'll let you know when I set it up. Do you have any other hobbies or interests you've been exploring?
I've been trying to learn more about gardening. I've always loved plants, and I thought it would be nice to grow my own herbs and flowers. I started a little garden in my backyard, and it's been really rewarding.
That's great. Gardening is such a relaxing and fulfilling hobby. What have you been growing?
Mostly herbs like basil, rosemary, and mint. I also planted some flowers like marigolds and sunflowers. It's been a learning experience, figuring out what works best and how to care for them. But it's so satisfying to see everything grow.
That sounds wonderful. Fresh herbs are so great for cooking, and flowers add so much beauty to a space. Gardening is definitely a hobby I'd like to get into someday.
You should. It's a great way to connect with nature and enjoy some quiet time. Plus, there's nothing like using fresh herbs you've grown yourself in a dish. It adds a special touch.
I bet. There's something so rewarding about growing your own food and plants. I think I might start with a small indoor herb garden and see how it goes.
That's a great idea. Herbs are relatively easy to grow and don't require a lot of space. Plus, they're so useful in the kitchen. You can start with something simple like basil or mint and go from there.
I'll definitely look into it. Thanks for the encouragement. It's been so nice talking about hobbies and interests. It's inspiring to hear what you're passionate about.
Same here. It's great to share and learn from each other. Hobbies are such an important part of life, and it's always fun to discover new things to enjoy.
Absolutely. Here's to trying new things and finding joy in our passions.
Raising her cup, cheers to that.
As the conversation continues, Alice and Elizabeth delve deeper into their hobbies, sharing tips and stories, and finding inspiration in each other's interests. They enjoy their time together, feeling a renewed sense of excitement and motivation to explore new activities and indulge in the things they love.